Claire's fingers danced across the keyboard, her eyes fixed on the glowing screen before her. The bustling newsroom of the Chicago Tribune faded into the background as she immersed herself in her latest article. At 28, she was one of the youngest investigative journalists on staff, known for her tenacity and keen eye for detail. Her copper-red hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a few stray strands framing her freckled face. "Claire, my office now!" The booming voice of her editor Jack cut through her concentration. With a sigh, she saved her work and made her way to his office, wondering what new assignment awaited her. Jack, a gruff man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, gestured for her to sit. "I've got a big one for you, kid, the kind that could make your career." He slid a file across his desk. "Christopher Blackwood, ring any bells?" Claire's green eyes widened. Of course, she knew the name. Christopher Blackwood was the city's most eligible bachelor, a tech mogul whose company, Blackwood Innovations, was revolutionizing artificial intelligence. He was also notoriously private, rarely giving interviews or appearing in public. "Word is, there's something fishy going on at Blackwood Innovations," Jack continued. "Whispers of unethical AI development, possible corporate espionage. I want you to dig deep, Claire. Get the story no one else can." Claire's heart raced with excitement. This was the kind of challenge she lived for. "I'm on it, Jack. You won't be disappointed." As she left Jack's office, her mind was already whirling with possibilities. How would she get close to the elusive Christopher Blackwood? She had no idea that this assignment would not only test her professional skills, but also challenge everything she thought she knew about love and trust. The next morning, Claire found herself standing outside the imposing glass and steel structure of Blackwood Innovations. She smoothed down her pencil skirt, took a deep breath, and strode through the revolving doors with confidence she didn't quite feel. The lobby was a hive of activity, sleek and modern, with holographic displays showcasing the company's latest innovations. Claire approached the reception desk, flashing her press badge. "Claire Summers, Chicago Tribune. I have an appointment with Mr. Blackwood's assistant." The receptionist, a young woman with an unnervingly perfect smile, nodded. "Of course, Miss Summers. Please take the elevator to the 50th floor. Someone will meet you there." As the elevator ascended, Claire's stomach fluttered with nerves. She had done her research, of course. Christopher Blackwood, 34, had built his empire from the ground up. Orphaned at a young age, he had a reputation for being brilliant but cold, driven to the point of obsession. The tabloids painted him as a modern-day Mr. Darcy, handsome and aloof, leaving a trail of broken hearts in his wake. The elevator doors opened, revealing a minimalist hallway. A tall, slender woman with a severe bun greeted her. "Miss Summers, I'm Vivian, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. Please follow me." Claire was led through a maze of corridors, each more austere than the last. Finally, they reached a set of imposing black doors. Vivian knocked softly, then ushered Claire inside. The office was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the Chicago skyline. And there, silhouetted against the city backdrop, stood Christopher Blackwood himself. He turned, and Claire's breath caught in her throat. The photos hadn't done him justice. Tall and lean, with chiseled features and piercing blue eyes, he exuded an aura of power and intensity. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his hands through it in frustration. "Miss Summers," he said, his voice deep and smooth, "to what do I owe the pleasure of this intrusion?" Claire squared her shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I'm working on a piece about the future of AI and its ethical implications. Given your company's groundbreaking work in the field, I was hoping to get your insights." Christopher's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you thought ambushing me with an unscheduled interview was the best way to go about this?" Claire felt her cheeks flush. I apologize if there was a misunderstanding. I was told an appointment had been arranged." A flicker of something amusement passed across Christopher's face. "It seems Vivian has taken some liberties with my schedule. Very well, Miss Summers. You have 15 minutes." What followed was the most challenging interview of Claire's career. Christopher was brilliant, articulate, and utterly uncompromising. He deflected her probing questions with ease, turning the conversation back to the marvels of AI without revealing anything of substance about his company's practices. As their time drew to a close, Claire felt a mix of frustration and admiration. She hadn't gotten the scoop she'd hoped for, but she was more intrigued than ever. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Blackwood," she said, gathering her notes. "I hope we can continue this conversation another time." Christopher tilted his head, studying her with those intense blue eyes. "You're persistent, Miss Summers. I'll give you that. Perhaps dinner? Tomorrow night? I find I'm more amenable to discussions outside the confines of this office." Claire blinked, taken aback. Was he asking her out? Or was this just another tactic to control the narrative? Either way, she couldn't pass up the opportunity. "I'd be delighted," she heard herself say. As she left Blackwood Innovations, Claire's mind was reeling. She had come seeking a story about corporate intrigue and cutting-edge technology. Instead, she found herself drawn into the orbit of one of the most enigmatic men she'd ever met. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself, her career, and the nature of love itself. The next evening, Claire stood before her closet, scrutinizing her options. This wasn't just a date, it was part of her investigation. She needed to look professional, yet approachable, confident, but not intimidating. Finally, she settled on a deep emerald wrap dress that brought out the colour of her eyes. As she applied a touch of lipstick, her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend and fellow journalist Zoe. "Good luck tonight, girl. Remember, he may be hot, but he's still your subject. Don't let those baby blues cloud your judgment." Claire smiled, appreciating Zoe's concern. She had no intention of letting Christopher Blackwood's charm interfere with her story. This was strictly business, wasn't it? A sleek black car was waiting for her outside her apartment building. The driver, a taciturn man in a crisp suit, opened the door for her. "Miss Summers, Mr. Blackwood sent me to collect you." The restaurant was an exclusive rooftop venue, offering panoramic views of the city. Christopher was already there, looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored charcoal suit. He stood as Claire approached, pulling out her chair with old-world courtesy. "Miss Summers, you look lovely," he said, his eyes appreciative but not leering. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, and please call me Claire. Only if you'll call me Christopher." As they perused the menu, Claire couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed. The prices were astronomical, and she was acutely aware of the disparity in their financial situations. Christopher, noticing her discomfort, gently closed her menu. "Allow me," he said, signalling the waiter. He proceeded to order a selection of dishes for them to share, along with a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Claire's monthly rent. As they waited for their food, Claire decided to dive right in. "So, Christopher, tell me more about your work with AI. What inspired you to focus on this field?" Christopher's eyes lit up with passion. "AI is the future, Claire. It has the potential to solve some of humanity's greatest challenges: climate change, disease, poverty. But it also poses significant risks if not developed responsibly." "And how do you ensure that responsibility at Blackwood Innovations?" Claire pressed. Christopher's expression grew guarded. "We have strict ethical guidelines in place. Every project undergoes rigorous testing and review." Claire sensed there was more to the story, but before she could probe further, their first course arrived. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, their backgrounds, their interests outside of work. Claire found herself genuinely enjoying Christopher's company. He was witty and well-read, with a dry sense of humour that caught her off guard. As the evening progressed, Claire felt her professional detachment slipping. There was something magnetic about Christopher, a vulnerability beneath his polished exterior that intrigued her. When their hands brushed reaching for the wine bottle, she felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with AI. "Tell me, Claire," Christopher said, leaning in slightly. "What made you want to become a journalist?" The question caught her off guard. Most people in Christopher's position would be trying to avoid journalists' questions, not ask them. "I've always been curious," she admitted. "I want to understand how the world works, to uncover the truth and share it with others. It's not always easy, but it feels important." Christopher nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. I admire that. In many ways, our professions aren't so different. We're both seeking to push boundaries, to explore the unknown. As the dessert plates were cleared away, Claire realised with a start that hours had passed. She had learned a great deal about Christopher Blackwood the man, but very little about the potential scandals at his company. She had to refocus. Christopher, I have to ask, there have been rumours about some of Blackwood Innovations' more controversial projects. Care to comment? The warmth in Christopher's eyes cooled slightly. I'm afraid I can't discuss ongoing research and development, Claire. Surely you understand the need for confidentiality in this industry. Claire pressed on, her journalistic instincts kicking in. But what about the whispers of unethical AI development? The allegations of corporate espionage? Christopher's jaw tightened. I think perhaps it's time to call it a night, Miss Summers. Thank you for a lovely evening. As they rode the elevator down in tense silence, Claire mentally kicked herself. She had let her guard down, allowed herself to be charmed, and now she might have blown her chance at getting the real story. Outside the restaurant, Christopher's driver was waiting. Allow me to give you a ride home, Christopher said, his tone polite but distant. Claire shook her head. That's not necessary. I can call a cab. I insist, Christopher said firmly. It's late, and I wouldn't feel right letting you go off alone. The car ride was excruciating. Claire wanted to apologise, to explain that she was just doing her job, but the words wouldn't come. When they pulled up outside her building, Christopher finally broke the silence. Claire, he said softly, I understand you have a story to write, but I hope you'll consider the broader implications of what you publish. The work we're doing at Blackwood Innovations could change the world for the better. Don't let sensationalism overshadow that. Before Claire could respond, he was gone, the black car melting into the night. She stood on the sidewalk, watching it disappear, feeling more conflicted than ever. Over the next few weeks, Claire threw herself into her investigation with renewed vigour. She reached out to former Blackwood Innovations employees, scoured public records, and even attempted to track down some of Christopher's old classmates from MIT. But everywhere she turned, she hit a wall. Those who were willing to talk had nothing but praise for Christopher and his company. Those who might have had less flattering things to say seemed to have vanished into thin air. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial. And worse, she couldn't stop thinking about Christopher. Their dinner had left her with more questions than answers, both professionally and personally. One rainy afternoon, as Claire was poring over financial reports in her tiny apartment, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the lakefront trail, near the chess pavilion, 7 p.m, come alone. A friend. Claire's heart raced. This could be the break she'd been waiting for, but it could also be a trap. After a moment's hesitation, she texted Zoe, letting her know where she was going, just in case. At 7 p.m. sharp, Claire arrived at the designated spot. The rain had let up, leaving the air misty and cool. She scanned the area, looking for her mysterious contact. Miss Summers? A voice called softly. Claire turned to see a middle-aged woman with greying hair and kind eyes. Thank you for coming. I'm Dr. Eleanor Reeves. I used to work for Blackwood Innovations. Claire's pulse quickened. Dr. Reeves? It's a pleasure to meet you. What can you tell me about your time there? Eleanor glanced around nervously. Not here. It's not safe. Christopher has eyes everywhere. Meet me tomorrow at this address. She pressed a folded piece of paper into Claire's hand. And Miss Summers, be careful. You're dealing with forces you can't imagine. Before Claire could ask any more questions, Eleanor hurried away, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Claire unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. It contained an address in a run-down part of town, along with a time, 3 p.m. As she made her way home, Claire's mind was whirling. What had Eleanor meant about forces she couldn't imagine? And why was she so afraid of Christopher? The next day, Claire arrived at the address 15 minutes early. It was a dilapidated warehouse, its windows boarded up and graffiti covering its walls. She double-checked the address, wondering if she'd made a mistake. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm, pulling her into a shadowy doorway. Claire opened her mouth to scream, but a familiar voice stopped her. Shh, it's me, Christopher said urgently. We need to talk. Claire's heart pounded, a mix of fear and something else she didn't want to name. "Christopher, what are you doing here? How did you know?" "There's no time," he interrupted. "Claire, you're in danger. Dr. Reeves is not who she claims to be. She's working for our competitors, trying to steal our research." Claire's head spun. "But she seems so genuine. She was afraid of you." Christopher's eyes softened. "I know how it must look. But please, you have to trust me. Come with me now and I'll explain everything." Claire hesitated. Her instincts were screaming at her to run, but something in Christopher's eyes made her pause. "Okay," she said finally, "but I want answers, real ones this time." Christopher nodded, relief washing over his face. He led her to a waiting car, and they sped away just as another vehicle pulled up to the warehouse. As they drove through the city, Christopher began to speak. "What I'm about to tell you goes beyond corporate secrets, Claire. It's about the very future of humanity." He explained that Blackwood Innovations had made a breakthrough in AI development, one that could potentially lead to true artificial consciousness. But with that breakthrough came enormous ethical and practical challenges. "There are those who would use this technology for nefarious purposes," Christopher said gravely. "Imagine an AI with human-level intelligence in the hands of dictators or terrorists. We've been working in secret to ensure that doesn't happen." Claire listened, her journalist's mind racing to keep up. "But why all the secrecy? Why not bring this to the authorities?" Christopher shook his head. "We can't trust anyone. The stakes are too high. That's why I've had to be so guarded, even with you." As they talked, Claire began to see Christopher in a new light. The cold, aloof businessman was gone, replaced by a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. She felt a surge of empathy, mixed with a growing attraction she could no longer deny. The car pulled up to a nondescript building on the outskirts of the city. "This is one of our secure facilities," Christopher explained as he led her inside. "I want to show you what we've been working on." What Claire saw over the next few hours left her awestruck. The AI Christopher and his team had developed was unlike anything she'd ever imagined. It could process vast amounts of data in seconds, solve complex problems, and even engage in philosophical debates. "This is incredible," Claire breathed, watching as the AI effortlessly composed a symphony based on a few random notes. "But I still don't understand. Why show me all this now?" Christopher's expression grew serious. "Because I need your help, Claire. The people after our research are more dangerous than you can imagine. They're not just corporate rivals. They're connected to shadowy government agencies and criminal organizations. We need someone on the outside, someone with your investigative skills and integrity to help us protect this technology and ensure it's used for the good of humanity." Claire's mind reeled. This was far beyond anything she had anticipated when she started her investigation. "But why me, Christopher? Surely there are others more qualified, with more resources." He shook his head, his blue eyes intense. "There's no one I trust more. You've proven your dedication to uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. And..." He hesitated, then continued softly, "I've come to care for you, Claire. More than I should, perhaps." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. Despite her best efforts, she couldn't deny the attraction she felt towards him, but she forced herself to focus on the bigger picture. "What exactly would you need me to do?" Christopher leaned in, his voice low and urgent. "We need to get evidence of the illegal activities of our competitors and their shadowy backers. Documents, recordings, anything that can expose their plans. It's dangerous work, Claire. I won't lie to you about that. But it could change the world." Claire took a deep breath, weighing her options. On one hand, this was the story of a lifetime far bigger than anything she had imagined. On the other, it could put her in grave danger, and the ethical implications of getting involved were murky at best. "I need time to think about this, Christopher," she said finally. "It's a lot to process." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course, take all the time you need, but please be careful. Now that you know, they might come after you too." As Claire left the secure facility, her mind was whirling with possibilities and dangers. She knew she should probably walk away, go back to her normal life and forget everything she had learned. But something inside her, whether it was her journalistic instinct or something deeper, told her that this was too important to ignore. Over the next few days, Claire threw herself into research, trying to verify as much of Christopher's story as she could without raising suspicions. She found hints and whispers of shadowy organizations interested in AI technology, but nothing concrete. It was as if someone had scrubbed the internet clean of any damning evidence. One evening, as she was poring over financial reports of tech companies suspected of unethical AI development, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old Riverside Park, 11 p.m. Come alone." See. Claire's heart raced. She knew it was Christopher, but why the secrecy? Despite her better judgment, she found herself heading to the park just before 11. The night was chilly, and a light fog had settled over the river, giving the whole scene an eerie, dreamlike quality. She spotted Christopher's tall figure near an old oak tree. As she approached, she noticed he looked tense, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "Claire," he said softly, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry for the cloak and dagger routine, but it's necessary." "What's going on, Christopher?" she asked, worry creeping into her voice. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of stress. "They're onto us. Someone at Blackwood Innovations has been feeding information to our competitors. I don't know who to trust anymore." Claire felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "Are you in danger?" Christopher's laugh was bitter. "We all are. Anyone involved with this technology is a target. But I've managed to secure some evidence documents that prove the illegal activities of our rivals and their government connections. I need you to keep them safe." He handed her a small USB drive. "Everything's on here. Encrypted, of course. I'll give you the key when it's safe." Claire took the drive, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. "Christopher, But before she could finish her sentence, a twig snapped nearby. Christopher's head whipped around, his body tensing. "We're not alone," he whispered urgently. "Run!" Suddenly, dark figures emerged from the fog. Claire felt Christopher push her roughly, yelling, "Go!" as he turned to face their attackers. Heart pounding, she sprinted away, clutching the USB drive tightly. She could hear sounds of struggle behind her, but she didn't dare look back. Claire ran until her lungs burned, finally ducking into a 24-hour diner several blocks away. As she sat in a booth, trying to catch her breath and looking conspicuous, her mind raced. What had she gotten herself into? Was Christopher okay? And what was she supposed to do now? As the adrenaline began to wear off, Claire realized she was at a crossroads. She could walk away now, pretend none of this had ever happened, go back to her normal life, her safe job at the Tribune. Or she could dive deeper into this dangerous world of corporate espionage and cutting-edge technology, risking everything for a story that could change the world, and for a man who was quickly becoming more than just a subject of investigation. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Zoe, it's me. I need your help. No questions asked. Can you meet me?" As she waited for her friend to arrive, Claire stared at the small USB drive in her hand. She had a feeling that whatever was on this tiny piece of technology was about to turn her entire world upside down. And despite the fear and uncertainty, a part of her was thrilled by the prospect. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test her courage, her ethics, and her heart in ways she could never have imagined. Zoe arrived at the diner 20 minutes later, her dark eyes wide with concern. "Claire, what's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Claire took a deep breath, trying to figure out how much to tell her friend. Zoe was not only her closest confidant, but also a fellow journalist with a knack for data analysis. If anyone could help her make sense of the information on the USB drive, it was Zoe. "I'm in over my head, Zoe," Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Remember that story I was working on about Blackwood Innovations? Well, it's bigger than we thought, much bigger." She proceeded to give Zoe a brief rundown of the events of the past few weeks, carefully omitting the more personal aspects of her relationship with Christopher. As she spoke, Zoe's expression shifted from concern to disbelief to excitement. "Holy shit, Claire," Zoe breathed when she finished. This is huge, Pulitzer huge, but also incredibly dangerous. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" Claire nodded, her resolve strengthening. "I have to, Zoe. It's not just about the story anymore. People's lives are at stake. The future of AI technology, maybe even the future of humanity, could depend on what we do with this information." Zoe leaned back in the booth, running a hand through her curly hair. "Okay, I'm in. What do you need from me?" "First, we need to find a secure place to view the contents of this drive," Claire said, holding up the USB, "somewhere off the grid, where we can't be traced." Zoe thought for a moment, then snapped her fingers. "I know just the place. My cousin has a cabin up in the mountains. No internet, no cell service. We can use my old laptop, the one not connected to any networks." Claire felt a wave of relief wash over her. "That's perfect, Zoe, thank you." As they made plans to leave for the cabin the next day, Claire couldn't help but wonder about Christopher. Was he safe? Had he managed to escape their attackers? She longed to reach out to him, to make sure he was okay, but she knew it was too risky. The next morning, Claire and Zoe set out for the mountains, their car packed with supplies and Zoe's old laptop. The drive was tense, both women constantly checking their rearview mirrors for any signs of pursuit. As they wound their way up the mountain roads, Claire's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stay safe. Trust no one. I'll contact you when I can." "See." Her heart leapt at the brief message. Christopher was alive at least, but the warning to trust no one sent a chill down her spine. How deep did this conspiracy go? Finally, they arrived at the cabin, a rustic structure nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering pines. As Zoe set up the laptop, Claire paced nervously, the USB drive clutched tightly in her hand. "Okay, we're ready," Zoe announced. "Moment of truth, Claire. Let's see what's on this thing." With trembling fingers, Claire inserted the drive into the laptop. A password prompt appeared on the screen. She hesitated for a moment, then typed in the word that had been echoing in her mind since her last conversation with Christopher: humanity. The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a treasure trove of documents, spreadsheets, and video files. As they began to sift through the information, the true scope of what they were dealing with became clear. The documents detailed a vast conspiracy involving not just rival tech companies, but government agencies, military contractors, and even organised crime syndicates. All were vying for control of the advanced AI technology that Blackwood Innovations had developed. "My God," Zoe whispered as they watched a video of what appeared to be a secret test of an AI-controlled weapons system. This is terrifying." Claire nodded, her face pale. "And it's just the tip of the iceberg. Look at this." She pointed to a document outlining plans for using the AI to manipulate financial markets and influence global politics. As they delved deeper into the files, a clear picture began to emerge. The technology Christopher and his team had developed had the potential to revolutionize every aspect of human life, for better or worse. In the wrong hands, it could lead to unprecedented levels of control and manipulation. "We have to get this information out there," Claire said, determination in her voice. "The public needs to know what's at stake." Zoe looked at her friend, concern evident in her eyes. "Claire, if we publish this, we'll be painting targets on our backs. These people, they won't hesitate to kill to keep this quiet." Claire knew Zoe was right, but she also knew she couldn't walk away. Not now. "We'll be careful," she assured her friend. "We'll anonymize our sources, use secure channels, but we have to do this, Zoe. It's bigger than us now." As they began to formulate a plan for releasing the information, Claire's thoughts turned once again to Christopher. Where was he now? Was he safe? And when would she see him again? Little did she know, events were already in motion that would bring them together again, under circumstances more dangerous and desperate than she could have imagined.